The first preseason of the new year, and the first opportunity to draw wild, irrational conclusions about 90 minutes of football. And this game was even overshadowed by Rafinha, the newest Brazilian signing for FC Barcelona that, don't you worry, we're going to be talking a lot about on the podcast here on the YouTube channel. So for this one, it's just about that Olot friendly. And if you never heard of Olot, they're a 4th tier team in Spanish football, just promoted from the 5th tier. And they've played in the hills of Catalonia for the last 101 years, I guess just waiting for this friendly to come along. It was a game that even this mainly Barcelona Athletic team, along with a few new arrivals and some of the regulars, should have outplayed their opponent by a considerable margin. And even though the score is 1-1, I'm going to remind you it's a preseason, so I don't give a darn what the score was 1-1 or even if Barca lost 2-1. Doesn't matter too much what the final score is. It just matters what Barcelona are trying to do on the field and can they accomplish some of those goals. How good do they look? How quick is the ball moving? And all those other little details that are a precursor to what's to come for the season this year. But just before that, because this is a new season, if you're new to this channel, make sure you give us a subscribe and plenty of likes on the videos, but also follow us on social media. Between the podcast, the videos here, the Patreon, as well as merchandise, there's a lot going on, and I don't want you to miss any of it. And speaking of a lot going on, headline one was an easy one, and that's that Barcelona got another one. I'm of course talking about Pablo Torre, the 19-year-old who has recently arrived from Racing Santander down in the 3rd division, but due to Pablo Torre being their best player down in the 3rd division last season, they were promoted to the 2nd division. And while there were questions if he was going to play with the first team or the second team, I think he's already answered those. He may get minutes down with Rafa Marquez, but he won't be a stranger to the first team this season. In just 45 minutes, he showed that he was able to get out on the left wing and make things happen. He set up Aubameyang through the middle there in the first 10 minutes or so, and he was even taking the set pieces. Pablo Torre clearly already fits like a glove as one of those high interiors for Xavi. On that left side, being able to combine with the left winger, playing deep when he has to, helping with build-up, just positionally, that sense that he has is a thing that Barcelona's midfield needs. When he was on the field, alongside Franck, Kessie, and Nico Gonzalez, more on them later, Barcelona's midfield dominated that first half. So yeah, the first half ended 1-1, so did the game. But again, I'm not too concerned with that. I'm concerned with the fact that Pablo Torre was one of the best players on the field and shown out in his debut. Unlike some of the other big arrivals, again, he's expected to play with the B team. But in the long run, as I said when he was first signed, he might have the longest lasting impact of any new signing this offseason. And that's a lot of expectation to put on the 19-year-old shoulders, but again, it's not. You look who was in that second half with Pedri, with Ansu Fati, with Gavi still around, and Nico just 21 behind him. There's a lot of young players to share the burden of expectations. 2 is first team for a reason. I am talking about the goal. I'm not going to break it down. Actually, isn't much to break down at all. Barcelona were under pressure for the first time in the game. In the first 30 minutes of action, Olot was finally in Barcelona's final third. They were able to survive that little foray of attack that Olot put together. Ter Stegen gets not even the save, but he picks the ball up and just boots it forward to Aubameyang, and Aubameyang lost the goalkeeper as easy as you like. That's a goal that's probably not going to happen very often at the highest level, but in a preseason friendly, you get him any way you can. Ter Stegen didn't have much to do, and this a preseason friendly certainly is not the time where I'm going to have any questions about the German in the preseason. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is exactly who we know he is, and his job this season, I think especially with those wingers coming in, is to put the ball in the back of the net. All I truly care about with Aubameyang this season, whether Lewandowski's here or not, is how well can he just finish the ball. Don't even worry about the build-up. He's going to make mistakes. His first touch isn't great, but how can those wingers create opportunities for him, and can he put those home? Number 3 is just getting on the field. By watching this friendly, I learned that I've been saying, well, I said Marc Casado, but it's Marc Casado. I was ignoring that accent on the O, and I've learned after 3 years how to say it properly. So starting with Marc Casado, if he was going to get on the field today with Nico, certainly Xavi wanted to take a look at him for the first 45 minutes, and then Pjanic coming on as the pivot in the second half. That means that Casado, who's a good enough player to get some preseason minutes, at least until they leave for the US and he likely goes back to Barcelona Athletic, he had to do it at the right back spot. And that's really a lesson for the young player, that if you want minutes, if you want time, sometimes you're going to have to play out of position in a place that you're not natural or comfortable in. He's been playing in the pivot spot in basically every match that he's played in the last, 4 or 5 years in the subsidiary. And then instead of moving to the pivot when center back Arnau Casas exited, he moved back to the center back spot. And Casado looked just fine. On the left side was Alex Valle, who played as a left back in the first half and moved to the left wing in the second half. He was tidy, played within himself. I mean, again, this is just from this, but it looks like Xavi might believe he has the potential to overtake Balde as knocking on the first team door. He is just a few months younger than Balde, played primarily with the U19s last season, and will be with Barça Atlètic this year. I'm not sure if Balde is going to go out on loan. Remember, his agent is Jorge Mendes, so I think there might be something in the works. I don't think he might be sold necessarily, and if he is, there will be some kind of high buyback, because Barcelona has been high on Balde for a long, long time as their left back of the future, and I don't think him, we'll say, falling behind his potential just at this point, again, still 18 years old. The club definitely isn't going to give up on him just yet. But it's good to see that Alex Valle is prepared to give him some competition to see who's that next young talent at left back. Because when it comes to the left back spot, Barcelona definitely need to be looking towards the future. Another player to note is Fabio Blanco, who did only play the last 15 minutes and change after Valle limped off. I think he'll be heading right back to Barcelona Athletic when the team goes to leave for the U.S. as well. But he did play as right back, another player who, while he's usually playing on the wing, that being the right wing or sometimes on the left, does not play at the right back spot. That's where Xavi put him because, hey, you earned a spot in this game, but we have all those other spots filled by actual first-team players. And he didn't look too shabby either in those final 15 minutes. In front of him was Alex Callado on the right wing, and I think that's where Xavi is showing you that he will play him, especially after what we saw from Pablo Torre in the first half. If Frankie de Jong, we'll talk more about it on the podcast tomorrow, but if Frankie de Jong can barely get minutes at an interior spot, Alex Callado certainly won't. But there may be some opportunities, even with Rafinha and Dembele in tow, there might be some opportunities for Callado in rotation or off the bench as a right winger. But he's going to have to be a bit more disciplined. He was moving around a lot like he does. It's one thing in the third division or even with Granada to wander, because for Granada, that was his job. He had to be the creator and he had support in behind him. But for Barcelona, that positional play and kind of sticking to your laurels on your spot and allowing those movements to happen organically, knowing that Fati is the guy that's going to be moving in and out or working around the front three. So Callado, unless it's in tandem and all that switching is happening in perfect harmony, he's going to have to stay put and be a bit more disciplined defensively. 4, speaking of Ansu Fati, he was in the middle today. And I think that's not really a surprise. We knew that Xavi, just when he was bringing him back from injury, put him right there at the center forward spot. I think you're going to see a bit of that. Yeah, due to injury, but with Dembele and Rafinha now in tow, as I said before, I think Ansu Fati might find himself in the middle. We don't know about Lewandowski, of course, that's the big wild card here, but if it is just Aubameyang, then who's his backup? Yeah, I think the answer is Ansu Fati. It could be Memphis Depay as well, but who knows if he'll be at the club. The other thing to note about Ansu in the middle, I really think that Xavi wants to see more of that partnership. I don't have the exact number here, but based on my own records, it was just 14 times that Ansu Fati and Pedri have played together. 14. That's still so nuts of a number. It's so low that Ansu and Pedri have not been able to combine. We saw just a little taste of that, and that connection, that being Fati and Pedri, is why you play the preseason, more than it is to see the 17 and 18-year-olds who will likely be playing in the B team. And for Ansu, the coolest thing that I think he'll get out of this match, not a goal, was the fact that he did wear the captain's armband. Again, he's been a player that came from Sevilla when he was about 10, 11 years old, and now even though it's a preseason friendly to wear the captain's armband, hey, that's a big deal for him. And headline number 5 is Get It Back. I hadn't talked about Franck Kessie yet, and I think it's just about that time. I probably should have talked about it even earlier about that whole first team thing, because it wasn't just, the fact that he looked stronger and bigger and more physical than everyone else, because he wasn't. He actually didn't have to be that physical in this game. His one touch was exactly what you wanted to see from a new player in Barcelona's midfield. He helped control the game along with Pablo Torre and Nico Gonzalez, and he just looked like he could go in slow motion. Even if he was in second gear, he was easily able to find the space he needed to. He got forward when he had to, he defended when he needed to, and his positional play was fabulous for me in that midfield. So Kessie, certainly just thumbs up for him. There's a lot I want to see more of him. I want to see him next to Busquets. I want to see what happens if it's him and De Jong. Is it going to be a double pivot? Exactly where Franck Kessie is going to fit is interesting to note, but at least if it's a pivot and 2 interiors, and he's the right interior, and then you have your left interior in Pedri or Pablo Torre or even Gavi pushing forward a bit more, where Franck Kessie positioned himself and his ability to quickly combine with new teammates with one-touch passing, he hit all the marks for me today in a 45-minute debut. And lastly, on Nico Gonzalez, I was fine with his performance today. I think maybe even a little bit better than fine. Olot wasn't going to bring much pressure, so we didn't see him have to make a lot of hard decisions, if you will. His tackling was generally good in their third of the field, or their half of the field. I would have liked to see a bit more ingenuity and a bit more lateral movement in terms of cutting out some of those counterattacks that Olot had in about the last 15 minutes of the first half. But again, for Nico, I think he's also getting back into shape. To play that pivot position, and I know people say Busquets is super slow, he may be super slow, but he's also in really, really pristine shape. And I think Nico is finding his way back into form, which is, again, just fine for the first preseason game. If he continues to get some reps at the pivot, now we're talking about 2-3 friendlies down the line, or even in the Wangan-Pair Trophy game in a few weeks. That's where I really want to see him shut things down in his own defensive half of the field. And moving forward, I thought his decision-making was pretty good. Like I said with Franck Kessie and Pablo Torre, that midfield three worked really well. One-touch passing, Nico took some chances on those long balls, and by and large, with the ball, his decision-making was good. And as I had said on the podcast earlier in the week, if he doesn't make bad decisions with the ball, even if his tackling is here or there at times, his defensive positioning, he might have three defenders behind him if Barcelona play a 3-4-3. But at the present, I think that Xavi's giving him the opportunity to earn minutes and earn a spot as the backup in that 4-3-3 as a pivot, so that they really don't have to change too much and he can just have to work and deal with the overload of midfielders at the interior spot. So for Nico, I give it, a B plus maybe on the day, and I definitely want to see more of that. So it was a preseason game, 1-1, and leaving us with plenty more to see. And of course with Barcelona, there's a full preseason. I will be seeing them in person in a few weeks, and I'm really looking forward to that. I think it'll be a different way to view this team that I always just have to view on some kind of big TV or a computer screen or a phone or what have you. But again, if you are new to the channel and just jumping on for what I think is going to be a really exciting 22-23 season, where, not to say hope is restored, but I can tell you a lot of people got negative. A lot of supporters, not only of me, but of the club, got pretty negative in the last year and a half plus. But I feel like we're about to turn a corner. I feel like the positivity, and I feel like my subscribers, my viewers, you know that I try to keep things positive. So I hope you're enjoying the new arrivals like Pablo Torre, like Franck Kessie, because at least in 45 minutes, they're showing us that the sky is the limit. So again, thank you so much for joining me for this first preseason friendly of the year. And as always, Forza Barça.